Captain One stood in the briefing room and stared at the hologram floating above the table. The ship looked terrible. It was old, covered in patches, and one of the engines looked like it might fall off at any moment. Behind him, the alien admirals whispered to each other. Some of them laughed. "This is the," Admiral On said. His voice sounded like rocks grinding together. He was tall and covered in blue scales. "It is 127 years old. 6 different species have rejected this vessel. Now it belongs to you." One kept his face blank. He had served in the Earth Navy for 15 years before joining the Galactic Coalition. He had fought pirates in the asteroid belts and defended colonies from raiders. He had earned his rank, but the aliens did not care about any of that. "Your mission is simple," On continued. "You will patrol Sector 47 Delta. You will monitor communication relays. You will stay out of everyone's way." The Admiral's eyes glinted. "Perhaps this will teach your species some humility. In space, your human bravado means nothing. Technology and tradition win wars, not courage." One saluted. "We will not disappoint, Admiral." "You already have," On said. 2 hours later, One walked through the docking bay toward his new ship. His crew followed behind him. There were 47 humans total. They all looked at with expressions ranging from shock to horror. Lieutenant Jin Park, his chief engineer, walked beside him. She was short and thin, with dark circles under her eyes from too many late nights studying alien technology. "Captain," she said quietly, "that ship is a death trap." "I know. The hull plating is so thin I could probably punch through it. The jump drive is ancient. The weapons are outdated. This thing should be in a scrapyard, not in active service." "I know," One said again. "Then why are we doing this?" One stopped walking. He turned to look at his crew. They were all watching him, waiting for him to say something. Anything. Commander Dong, his first officer, stood with his arms crossed. He looked angry. Ensign Jin Lee, the youngest member of the crew, looked scared. Sergeant Wu Jin Nam and his Marines looked ready to fight someone. "They gave us this ship because they want us to fail," One said. His voice carried across the docking bay. "They think humans are reckless. They think we are stupid. They think that giving us the worst ship in the fleet will break us." He paused. "They are wrong." "How can you be sure?" Dong asked. "Because we are still here," One said. "Humans have survived ice ages and plagues. We have crossed oceans in wooden boats and walked on our own moon before we even knew if it was possible. We do not give up. We do not break. We adapt." Jin smiled slightly. "So what are we adapting to?" "Everything," One said. The inside of was worse than the outside. The corridors were narrow and smelled like old metal and recycled air. Half the lights did not work. The gravity fluctuated as they walked, making everyone stumble. In the engine room, Jin stood in silence for a full minute, just staring at the ancient machinery. "This is going to take a lot of coffee," she finally said. On the bridge, Jin sat down at the communications station and immediately jumped back up. "Something shocked me." "Wear gloves," One told her. The weapons station was even worse. The targeting computer was so old it still used physical buttons instead of touch screens. The plasma cannons could fire maybe 3 times before overheating completely. Dong ran diagnostics and shook his head. "We have less firepower than a standard patrol shuttle." "Then we will have to be creative," One said. The jump drive took 16 hours to charge for a single jump. The life support system turned itself off randomly. The food synthesizer only made 3 different meals, and all of them tasted like cardboard. The shower in the captain's quarters did not work at all. The ship's computer had an accent no one could identify and kept calling everyone by the wrong names. On their second day, a pipe burst in engineering. Jin and her team worked for 6 hours to fix it. On the third day, the main airlock failed to open. They had to use the emergency backup. On the fourth day, the artificial gravity turned off in the middle of the night, and everyone woke up floating. I am starting to think they are trying to kill us, Wu Jin said during breakfast. He was eating something the synthesizer claimed was eggs. It was gray. They do not have to try, Dong muttered. This ship will do it for them. But Jin was not ready to give up. She gathered her engineering team and started taking the ship apart, piece by piece. She cross-referenced human engineering principles with alien technology. She stayed up for 30 hours straight, running calculations and building models. The jump drive, she announced at a crew meeting, uses a magnetic containment system that is completely wrong for its power core. If we reconfigure it using principles from technology, we can reduce the charge time to 4 hours. Is that safe? Dong asked. Probably not, Jin admitted, but it will work. Jin discovered something interesting about the communications array. It was so old that it could still intercept legacy channels. They stopped encrypting these frequencies years ago, she explained. They thought no one would ever use equipment this outdated, but we can listen to their secure communications. That could be useful, one said. Wu Jin and his Marines found their own solution to the ship's weakness. If they could not win in a direct fight, they would train for boarding actions. They practiced in zero gravity until they could move through the ship blindfolded. They learned how to breach airlocks and fight in tight corridors. We might have a terrible ship, Wu Jin said, but we will have the best Marines in the fleet. 3 weeks after leaving the station, they got their first mission update. They were to patrol an empty section of space and report on comm relay status. It was boring work, meant to keep them out of the way. But on their 5th week, everything changed. Jin picked up a distress call. A coalition merchant convoy was under attack by raiders. The nearest patrol ship was 8 hours away. There was 2 hours away. Dong pulled up tactical data. Captain, we cannot engage raiders with this ship. It would be suicide. One looked at the screen. The convoy had civilians on board, families, children. If they waited for the patrol ship, those people would be dead. Set a course, he ordered. Maximum speed. Captain, we did not come out here to watch people die, one said. We came out here to prove something, so let us prove it. The crew stared at him. Then one by one they nodded. Jin ran to engineering. Dong started plotting attack vectors. Jin opened all channels. Wu Jin checked his weapons. They turned toward the distress signal, its engines burning as hot as they could go. Behind them, they left a trail of coolant and sparks. They looked like they were flying toward their deaths. But they were really flying toward something else entirely. The merchant convoy appeared on their screens 30 minutes before they arrived. 3 cargo ships, each carrying supplies and civilian passengers. 4 raider vessels surrounded them like sharks circling prey. The raiders were small but fast, with weapons far better than anything they had. They are firing on the cargo ships, Jin reported. Her voice shook slightly. The convoy's shields are failing. One studied the tactical display. In a normal fight, they would lose in minutes, but he had not survived 15 years in space by fighting normal fights. Jin, he said over the comm, how much power can you give me? For what? She asked from engineering. Everything, engines, weapons, everything at once. There was a pause. Captain, if I do that, something will break, probably several things. Can you do it? Another pause, then yes, for about 5 minutes. 5 minutes is all I need, one said. He turned to Dong. Get me a firing solution on the nearest raider, but do not shoot until I tell you. They came in fast, much faster than the raiders expected. Most ships this old could not accelerate like that. But Jin had stripped weight from everything that was not essential, and the old engines, despite their problems, still had power. The raiders turned to face the new threat. Their targeting systems locked onto but one did not slow down. He flew straight at them. Captain Dong said, they are firing. I see them, evasive pattern 7. Dong blinked, there is no such pattern. There is now. Hard to starboard, drop 30 degrees, barrel roll, then boost. The twisted through space in a pattern that made no sense to anyone except one. The Raider fire missed. Barely. One shot scraped their hull and alarms started screaming. Breach on deck 3, someone shouted. Seal it, one ordered. Dong fire. The plasma cannons opened up at point-blank range. The Raider's shields absorbed most of the damage, but the ship staggered. Before it could recover, one spun the around and fired again. And again. The modified weapons overheated quickly, but they fired faster than the Raiders expected. The Raiders' shields collapsed. The ship tried to flee, but one was faster. One more burst and the Raiders' engines exploded. One down, Dong said. He sounded surprised. But 3 Raiders remained, and now they were angry. They broke formation and attacked from 3 different angles. They could not dodge them all. Wu Jin, one said calmly, you are up. In the hangar bay, Wu Jin and his Marines launched in boarding pods. These were tiny, armored capsules designed to carry troops from one ship to another. The pods flew past the Raider fire, too small and too fast to hit easily. One pod slammed into the hull of a Raider ship. Cutting torches flared. Then Wu Jin and 4 Marines breached through. Inside the Raider ship, chaos erupted. The Raiders had never fought humans in close combat before. They learned quickly that this was a mistake. Wu Jin's Marines moved through the ship like they owned it. They were faster in the tight corridors. They were stronger in hand-to-hand combat. Within 10 minutes, they had taken the ship's bridge. Wu Jin's voice came over the comm. Captain, we have control of Raider Vessel 2. What do you want us to do with it? Turn its guns on the others, one said. The captured Raider ship opened fire on its former allies. The remaining 2 Raiders panicked. One tried to run. The other tried to fight. One destroyed the one that fought. The one that ran made it almost 300 kilometers before its engines failed. Jin had scrambled its systems remotely using the old communications array. They really should have updated their security protocols, Jin said cheerfully. The convoy was saved. The cargo ships were damaged but intact. No civilians had died. They floated among the wreckage, venting coolant and sparks but still flying. One sat in his chair and let out a long breath. They had done it. Against all odds, with a ship that should not even be flying, they had won. Jin, send a message to Coalition Command. Tell them we have secured the convoy and are standing by for further orders. Yes, Captain. The response took 3 hours to arrive. When it did, Dong read it with a frown. Coalition Command acknowledges our report. They credit the convoy's survival to fortunate timing and the late arrival of Raiders. They make no mention of our actions. Of course they do not, one said quietly. The repairs took 5 days. Jin and her team worked around the clock, patching hull breaches and replacing burned-out systems. The jump drive had to be completely rebuilt. The plasma cannons needed new coolant systems, and they were out of coffee. I cannot work without coffee, Jin said. She looked exhausted. This is a humanitarian crisis. I will note it in my log, one told her. But something had changed during those 5 days. The crew moved differently. They talked differently. They were no longer a group of people stuck on a terrible ship. They were a team. They trusted each other. They had faced death together and survived. Dong came to one's quarters one evening. The first officer stood in the doorway for a moment before speaking. I owe you an apology, Captain. For what? I thought this assignment was punishment. I thought you were going to get us all killed with your unconventional tactics. Dong paused. I was wrong. Your tactics are the only reason we are still alive. One smiled slightly. Conventional tactics require conventional resources. We have to work with what we have. What we have is a ship that should not be flying, and a crew that does not know when to quit. Exactly. Over the next few months, they responded to 17 more incidents in Sector 47 Delta. Each time, They arrived before anyone expected them. Each time, they won using tactics that made no sense to other coalition ships. They saved a mining station from a pirate attack by pretending to be a cargo ship until the last moment. They rescued a science vessel caught in a gravity well by using their modified jump drive in a way that should have been impossible. They stopped a smuggling operation by having Jin hack into the smuggler's computer and play extremely loud music until they surrendered. "Did you just defeat a criminal organization with music?" one asked her. "It was very loud music," Jin said defensively, "and they were trying to concentrate on their escape course." Word began to spread through the sector. That was becoming known, not famous exactly, but known. When pirates heard that the old ship with the strange name was nearby, some of them decided to raid somewhere else. But Coalition Command still refused to acknowledge their success. Official reports barely mentioned them. Awards went to other ships. The remained assigned to the forgotten edges of space. One did not care about the awards, but he cared about his crew. They were working double shifts with equipment that constantly broke down. They deserved recognition. They deserved respect. One day, a message arrived from Nexus Prime. Captain 1 was ordered to report to the Admiralty immediately. He was to come alone. Jin looked worried. This could be good news. "Could be," one agreed. "But you do not think it is." No. He was right. When he arrived at Nexus Prime and stood before Admiral On, they did not look pleased. In fact, he looked angry. Captain On said coldly, "Your ship has become a problem." "Sir, you have responded to 17 incidents in 6 months. Your success rate is impossibly high for a vessel of this classification. Some members of the Admiralty believe you are falsifying reports." One kept his voice level. "We are not falsifying anything, Admiral. Every report is accurate." "Then explain to me how you are achieving these results with a ship that should have been scrapped years ago." "We work harder," one said simply. "We think differently. We do not accept that something is impossible just because it is difficult." On stared at him for a long moment. Then he turned and activated a holographic display. It showed a region of space filled with dead ships, thousands of them, maybe tens of thousands. "This is the Morning Fields," On said, "an ancient shipyard in neutral space. Centuries of derelict warships from extinct civilizations float there. It is protected as a historical site." "I am familiar with it, Admiral." "Then you know that entering it without authorization is forbidden." On's eyes glinted. "We have intelligence that suggests the Dominion is secretly salvaging weapons technology from the graveyard. We need confirmation, but we cannot risk a diplomatic incident by sending a modern warship." One understood immediately. "So you are sending us." "If you are destroyed, it is no real loss. If you succeed, we have the intelligence we need. If you are caught, you are deniable." On leaned forward. "Do you accept this mission, Captain?" One met the Admiral's gaze. "Yes." "Why?" "Because someone has to," one said, "and because my crew can do things that others think are impossible." On nodded slowly. "You have 1 week to prepare. Do not disappoint me, Captain." "We will not, Admiral." As one left the briefing room, he thought about his crew. About Jin, who turned broken machines into working ones through sheer stubbornness. About Dong, who had learned to trust the unconventional. About Jin, who could hack alien systems with a smile. About Wu Jin, whose marines could board any ship in existence. They had been given the worst ship in the fleet, and they had turned it into something special. Now they were going into the graveyard of civilizations. It was time to see what else they could become. The morning fields looked like a nightmare made of metal. Thousands of dead ships floated in the darkness, their hulls torn and broken. Some were small, barely bigger than shuttles. Others were massive dreadnoughts that must have carried crews of tens of thousands. All of them were silent now. All of them were graves. I am reading power signatures, Jin said quietly. Deep inside the field, multiple sources. The Dong said. One nodded. They are here. The question is where exactly and what are they taking? Jin had spent the week before they arrived studying everything she could find about the morning fields, ancient civilizations, lost technologies, ships that had fought wars before humans had even discovered fire. Now she stood in engineering, staring at her screens with an expression one had learned to recognize. She had an idea. Captain, she said over the comm, I need to show you something. In engineering, Jin pulled up a map of the morning fields. Red dots marked the power signatures, but there was another dot, blue and blinking, in a different section entirely. What am I looking at? One asked. That is a human ship, Jin said. From the first diaspora, it left Earth about 400 years ago and was never heard from again. Everyone assumed it was destroyed, but it is here, Captain, intact. How intact? Enough to still have power in its data cores. Jin's eyes gleamed. Captain, that ship might have technology that the Coalition has never seen. Different FTL principles, different power systems. It could change everything. Our mission is to observe not to salvage. Our mission, Jin said carefully, is to gather intelligence. Would it not be good intelligence to know what technologies exist in this field? They certainly think so. One smiled despite himself. You want to steal from the graveyard. I want to recover human property, Jin corrected. There is a difference. They went in dark. All non-essential systems powered down. They drifted like just another piece of wreckage, using only passive sensors. They moved slowly through the debris field, past ships that looked like cathedral spires and others that resembled sea creatures from Earth's oceans. Jin monitored all frequencies. They are not even trying to hide. They are using active mining equipment, cutting through hull plating, extracting components. How many ships? Dong asked. I count 4 vessels. All of them are working inside a massive dreadnought. It looks like they have set up a temporary base there. One studied the tactical display. Can you get recordings, full sensor data? Already doing it, Jin said. But Captain, they will detect us eventually. Their sensors are very good. Then we need to be fast. Jin, how far to the human ship? 20 minutes at current speed. We have 10, move faster. The human colony ship was called the New Horizon. It hung in space like a sleeping giant, its hull but whole. When they docked with it, the airlock opened with a hiss that sounded like a sigh. Jin led a team inside with Wu Jin and 3 Marines for security. They carried portable power units and data extraction equipment. Their helmet lights cut through the darkness, revealing corridors that had not seen life in 4 centuries. This is creepy, one of the Marines muttered. This is history, Jin corrected. She found a data terminal and connected her equipment, transferring everything. This will take 5 minutes. You said 10 minutes for the whole operation, Wu Jin reminded her. I lied. 5 minutes to download, 5 minutes to get back to the... While Jin worked, the Marines explored. They found the bridge, still equipped with its original controls. They found living quarters with personal belongings still in place. They found the engine room, and there, Jin found something that made her stop breathing. Captain, she whispered over the comm, you need to see this. The prototype drive sat in the center of the engine room like a work of art. It was completely different from anything one had ever seen. Not a jump drive, not a warp drive, something else entirely. What is it? He asked. I do not know yet, Jin admitted. But the design principles are completely different from Coalition technology. If I had to guess, I would say this was meant to be a phase shift drive. It does not push the ship through hyperspace. It shifts the ship out of phase with normal matter. Is it functional? The power core is dead, but the drive itself looks intact. If we can move it I might be able to make it work. How long? to move it, 3 hours to install it, days to make it actually function. I have no idea. One made a decision. Take it, take everything you can, we will figure out the rest later. They worked as fast as possible. The Marines helped Jin disconnect the prototype drive and move it to the... They stripped data cores, pulled component samples, and grabbed anything that looked useful. It was not elegant. It was not careful. But they did not have time for elegant. Captain, Jin's voice came over the comm, urgent now. They have detected us. They are launching interceptors. How long until they reach us? 8 minutes. One cursed. Jin, we are leaving in 2 minutes whether you are ready or not. Just one more thing. Now, Lieutenant. They undocked from the New Horizon with the prototype drive barely secured in the cargo bay. The engines fired up, and they accelerated away from the colony ship. Behind them, 4 interceptors closed in fast. They are faster than us, Dong reported. Then we do not run in a straight line, one said. He dove into the debris field, flying between dead ships at speeds that made his crew grab their armrests. The followed. They were skilled pilots and their ships were newer, faster, more maneuverable. One of them got a target lock. Plasma fire streaked past this hull. Shields at 60%, Dong called out. One flew through the gap between 2 massive cruisers, so close that the hull scraped against both of them. Alarms screamed. Behind him, one of the interceptors tried to follow and hit the cruiser instead. It exploded in a bright flash. 3 interceptors remained. They split up, trying to surround the... One pulled up hard, using a dead destroyer as cover. Plasma fire punched holes through the ancient ship, but the was already gone, diving down and then banking left. Jin once said, I need an idea. Working on it. In engineering, Jin stared at the prototype drive they had just stolen. It was not connected to anything. It was not even powered up. But maybe, just maybe, if she rerouted emergency power and bypassed every safety protocol in existence. Captain, do not let them shoot us for the next 30 seconds. Why? Because I am trying something that will either save us or kill us. The closed in. The shields dropped to 30%. 20. One flew through a field of debris so dense that even he was not sure they would make it through. Behind them, another interceptor clipped a piece of wreckage and spun out of control. 2 interceptors left. Both of them had target locks. Both of them fired at the same moment. Jin. Now. The prototype drive activated. It did not work the way it was supposed to. It did not phase shift the entire ship. But it did something. For exactly 3 seconds, they became partially intangible. The plasma fire passed straight through them, hitting nothing. Then the drive shut down with a sound like breaking glass, and they was solid again. They were on the other side of a massive debris field. The interceptors were still behind the field, trying to find a way through. Jump drive is charged, Jin reported. Get us out of here, one ordered. They jumped. When they reappeared, they were 3 light-years away, safe in Coalition space. In engineering, Jin sat on the floor, staring at the prototype drive. Smoke rose from several connections. Did I just do what I think I did? She asked no one in particular. You made us intangible, one of her engineers said. For 3 seconds, we did not exist in normal space. That is impossible. We just did it anyway. On the bridge, one looked at his crew. They were all alive. The ship was damaged but functional. They had footage of the operation, and they had a technology that might change everything. Jin, send a message to Admiral On. Tell him we have the intelligence he requested, and tell him we are coming in for repairs. Should I mention the prototype drive? She asked. One smiled. No, that is our secret for now. They limped toward Nexus Prime, leaving a trail of coolant and sparks. Inside, Jin was already planning how to properly install the phase shift drive. Jin was organizing the stolen data. Wu Jin was writing a report about boarding operations in zero gravity. Dong was calculating new tactical possibilities. They had gone into the graveyard of civilizations, and they had come back with something no one else in the galaxy had. They were no longer just the crew of the worst ship in the fleet. They were becoming something else, something dangerous, something unexpected. They were becoming legends. 6 months passed. That was different now. Jin had properly installed the phase shift drive. It did not work perfectly. It could only activate for short bursts, and it needed 20 minutes to recharge between uses. But it worked, and that was enough. The crew trained constantly. They practiced shifting in and out of phase while flying through asteroid fields. They rehearsed boarding actions until they could do them in their sleep. They learned every trick, every advantage they could find. But they were still assigned to Sector 47 Delta, still watching empty space, still ignored by Coalition Command. Then the war started. The Dominion launched a surprise attack on 3 Coalition systems at once. Their fleet was massive, hundreds of ships with weapons more advanced than anything the Coalition had seen before. Within the first week, 40 Coalition vessels were destroyed. Within 2 weeks, they were advancing on the inner sphere, where the Coalition's industrial worlds were located. If those worlds fell, the war was over. At Nexus Prime, Admiral On called for all available ships. Every vessel that could fly was ordered to the gate, a strategic between the outer systems and the inner sphere. If the Coalition could hold the gate, they could buy time. If they lost it, nothing would stop the advance. They arrived with the human contingent. 12 human ships in total, all of them modified with salvaged technology and unconventional tactics. They were placed in the rear reserves, meant to cover retreat if the battle went badly. "They still do not trust us," Dong said quietly. "They will," one replied. The Coalition fleet gathered at the gate. Over 200 ships formed up in defensive formations. Battleships, cruisers, destroyers, carriers. It was the largest fleet the Coalition had assembled in decades, and across from them, in the darkness of space, the Armada appeared. Nearly 400 ships. "We are outnumbered 2-1, Jin whispered. The battle began badly. They opened fire with weapons that tore through Coalition shields like paper. 3 battleships exploded in the first minute, 5 more in the second. Coalition forces returned fire, but the armor was thick and their shields were strong. One watched the tactical display. The Coalition was losing. Ships were dying. In another hour, maybe 2, the fleet would break and run, and then the inner sphere would fall. He opened a private channel to Admiral On. "Admiral, I request permission to speak." "Captain, I am busy." "I have a plan, sir." There was a long pause. "Speak quickly." "The Coalition cannot win a direct engagement, but we do not need to win that way. If my squadron can reach the command carrier and disable it, their fleet will lose coordination." "That carrier is in the center of their formation," On said. "It is surrounded by escort ships and protected by layered shields. You would never reach it." "With respect, Admiral, you do not know what we can do." Another pause, longer this time. "Then explain your plan." One did. When he finished, On was silent for 10 full seconds. "This is insane," the Admiral finally said. "Yes, sir. If you fail, we will not be able to rescue you. Your ships will be destroyed." "We know, sir." "Why would you take such a risk?" "Because it is the only chance we have," one said simply, "and because my crew can do things others think are impossible." On side, "Permission granted, Captain, do not disappoint me." "We will not, sir." One switched to the human squadron channel. "All ships, this is Captain, we are going in. Activate phase shift drives on my mark. Follow my lead and do not stop for anything." "Understood," the other captains responded. Jin's voice came from engineering. "Captain, the phase shift drive is ready, but if we push it too hard, it might burn out. Then we will have to be fast, one said. Everyone prepare for combat. The 13 human ships moved forward, accelerating toward the fleet. Every eye in both fleets watched them. Some thought they were brave. Others thought they were fools. Then all at once, the human ships vanished. They had phase shifted. For anyone watching, it looked like they simply disappeared from existence. But inside everything still worked. They could see the fleet ahead of them. They could see the massive command carrier in the center, a ship so large it looked like a small moon. Straight through, one ordered. Do not stop, do not slow down. The human ships flew through the formation like ghosts. Escort vessels tried to fire on them, but their weapons passed through empty space. The humans had shifted out of phase with normal matter. They could not be touched. But they also could not fire their own weapons while shifted. They had to time everything perfectly. The phase shift drives began to overheat. Warning lights flashed across the bridge. Jin's voice was strained. Captain, we have maybe 30 seconds before shutdown. 20 seconds to the command carrier, Dong reported. We will make it, one said. They did barely. The 13 human ships appeared inside the formation, already firing. The escort vessels, caught completely by surprise, scrambled to respond. But the humans were moving too fast, shifting in and out of phase, impossible to track or target. 2 human ships took damage and had to fall back. The remaining 11 pressed forward. Wu Jin's Marines launched in boarding pods toward 3 different vessels, causing chaos in the enemy ranks. They flew directly at the command carrier. It was massive, bristling with weapons. Shields flickered around it in layers. It looked invincible. Jin, jam their communications, one ordered. I do not want them calling for help. On it. Dong, give me a firing solution on their shield generators. Captain, we cannot penetrate those shields with our weapons. We are not going to shoot through them, one said. We are going through them another way. Jin, how much charge do you have left in the phase shift drive? One more burst, maybe 5 seconds. That is all I need. One took a deep breath. Everyone hold on, this is going to be rough. He aimed directly at the command carrier's hangar bay. Full speed, no deviation. They must have thought he was insane trying to ram their ship. Their point defense weapons opened fire, filling space with plasma. The shields failed. Hull plating burned away. Alarms screamed across every deck. Captain, Dong shouted. Now Jin. The phase shift drive activated. They became intangible. For 5 seconds, it did not exist in normal space. It flew straight through the command carrier's shields, through the outer hull, into the hangar bay. Then the drive shut down and they became solid again, inside the enemy ship. Chaos erupted. They had never had an enemy vessel materialize inside their hangar. Their protocols did not cover this situation. They opened fire at point-blank range, destroying fighter craft and support equipment. But something went wrong. The phase shift had created a quantum feedback effect with the carrier's shields. Energy surged through both ship systems. Lights exploded. Computers crashed. Every system on the command carrier failed at once. The massive ship went dark. No power, no weapons, no communications. It drifted, silent and helpless. Jin stared at her screens in disbelief. What just happened? We shorted out their entire ship, one of her engineers said. The phase shift feedback overloaded everything. Jin's excited voice came over the comm. Captain, the fleet is breaking formation. They lost their command structure. One pulled out of the dying carrier through the hangar bay they had entered. Outside, the armada was in disarray. Ships were pulling back, unsure what to do without orders from the command carrier. Some tried to retreat. Others tried to continue the attack but without coordination. The coalition fleet, seeing the opportunity, surged forward. Admiral On's voice boomed across all channels. All ships, the humans have broken their command structure. Attack! Attack! The battle turned. Coalition ships, which had been losing minutes before, now pressed their advantage. They tried to reorganize, but it was too late. Their fleet began to fragment. One by one, their ships jumped away, retreating back toward their own territory. The coalition had won. They limped away from the battlefield, hull breached in 14 places, life support failing, the phase shift drive completely burned out. But they were flying. They were alive. And behind them, they had left a command carrier drifting dead in space, a symbol of what humans could do when everyone said it was impossible. One sat in his chair, exhausted. Around him, his crew looked the same, but they were smiling. "Captain," Jin said, "Admiral On is requesting communication." "Put him through." The Admiral's face appeared on screen. For the first time since one had met him, On looked impressed. "Captain, the Admiralty Board wishes to see you. Immediately." "Understood, Admiral." Captain On paused. "Well done." The transmission ended. One looked at his crew. They had done it. They had taken the worst ship in the fleet and turned it into something that changed the course of a war. They had become exactly what one had promised on that first day in the docking bay. They had adapted. They had survived. They had won. And now, finally, maybe they would get the recognition they deserved. 3 weeks after the Battle of Gate, Captain One stood before the Admiralty Board again. But everything was different this time. The chamber was packed with officers from dozens of species. Holographic displays showed footage from the battle, the flickering through enemy lines like a ghost, Marines boarding ships, the impossible moment when the old human cruiser appeared inside the command carrier. Admiral On stood at the center of the board. His voice carried across the silent chamber. "Captain, we have reviewed your service record. That has achieved a combat effectiveness rating 340% above its classification. You and your crew have saved thousands of lives. You altered the course of this war." One stood at attention. He did not speak. "The board has made a decision," On continued. "We are retiring You and your crew will be reassigned to a modern destroyer. The ship will have full systems, proper weapons, a crew of 300, everything you should have had from the beginning." Murmurs of approval ran through the chamber. This was a reward. This was recognition. This was everything they had earned. "I request time to consult my crew, Admiral," one said. On blinked. "You wish to refuse?" "I wish to ask my crew what they want, sir." The Admiral stared at him for a long moment, then nodded. "You have 24 hours, Captain." That evening, the crew of the gathered in the ship's mess hall. All 47 of them crammed into a space meant for 30. Some sat on tables. Others stood against the walls. They all looked at one, waiting. "The Admiralty wants to give us a new ship," he said. "A proper warship, modern systems, bigger crew, everything we need." No one spoke. Jin looked at the floor. Jin picked at her fingernails. Dong had his arms crossed, his expression unreadable. Wu Jin leaned against the wall, frowning. "But before I give them an answer," one continued, "I want to know what you think. This is your choice too." Silence filled the room. Then Jin stood up. "I have spent 8 months keeping this ship running," she said. "I know every system, every pipe, every wire. I know which panels rattle and which engines make strange sounds. I know how to fix things with spare parts and determination." She paused. "A new ship would have proper engineering staff, professional equipment. Everything would work the way it is supposed to." "So you want to transfer?" someone asked. "I did not say that." Jin smiled slightly. "I said everything would work, but where is the challenge in that? Where is the satisfaction? This ship taught me things no academy ever could. It made me better. Why would I give that up?" Jin stood next. "When I joined the coalition, I thought I would be just another communications officer, sitting at a console, following procedures, being normal." She looked around the room. I learned to hack alien systems. I learned to jam frequencies no one thought could be jammed. I learned that rules are suggestions, she grinned. I do not want to be normal anymore. Wu Jin pushed off from the wall. My Marines are the best in the fleet, not because we have the best equipment, not because we have the best training, but because we had to be better just to survive. We learned to board ships that thought they were safe. We learned to fight in ways no one expected. He crossed his arms. I am not giving that up for a bigger ship with more comfortable quarters. One by one, the crew members stood and spoke. The engineers who had rebuilt systems from scrap, the weapons officers who had learned to make outdated cannons into precision instruments, the Marines who had perfected zero-gravity combat, the pilots who could fly through debris fields that would destroy other ships. Finally, Dong stood. He had been quiet the whole time. When I first came aboard, I thought it was a punishment. I thought Captain's tactics were reckless. I thought we would all die doing things that made no sense. He looked at one. I was wrong about everything. This ship taught me that conventional thinking only works when you have conventional resources. We do not. So we had to become unconventional. We had to become better. He turned to address the whole crew. They gave us scrap and expected us to fail. We turned that scrap into something they fear, something they respect. Why would we give that up? The crew voted. It was unanimous. They would keep The next morning, one returned to the Admiralty board. We decline the offer of a new ship, Admiral. We request permission to keep thee and continue our mission. On stared at him. You are refusing a promotion, a better ship. We do not need a better ship, one said. We need our ship. I do not understand your species, On muttered. Then, louder, very well. That will be officially reclassified as an R&D vessel. You will receive priority for experimental systems and salvage rights. You will test new tactics and train other crews in your methods. He paused. You have earned this much, at least. Thank you, Admiral. But On was not finished. There is one more thing. The Coalition is beginning construction on a new ship class. Based on this modifications and your tactics, we are building 50 hulls. They will be called the Tenacity class. Fast attack cruisers, all of them crewed by humans. One felt something warm in his chest. Pride, maybe, or satisfaction. The Coalition is building ships based on our design. Your methods have proven effective, On admitted. Unconventional, reckless, but effective. Other species are watching how you fight. Some are learning. Others are adapting their own tactics. The Admiral's expression softened slightly. You have changed more than you know, Captain. 6 months later, they patrolled the frontier once more. But everything had changed. When pirates saw the battered old cruiser with its mismatched hull plating, they ran. When raiders checked their sensors and saw a ship broadcasting the signature, they jumped to other systems. Stories had spread. In space, they called it, which meant ghost ship. Other species had their own names, but everyone knew the same thing. They could not be killed, could not be stopped, could appear from nowhere and disappear just as quickly. Young human officers now competed for positions on the Tenacity-class ships. Assignments that had once been considered career-ending were now prestigious. Crews trained in the tactics they had pioneered, fast attacks, boarding actions, phase shifting through enemy formations, fighting smarter instead of harder. On Nexus Prime, there was a new saying among the Coalition forces. Give a human officer a terrible ship and they will turn it into a weapon. Give them a good ship and they will turn it into a legend. One day, Jin picked up a distress signal. A Coalition science vessel was under attack. 6 raiders. The nearest patrol ship was 6 hours away. Captain, she said, we are 2 hours away. One looked at his crew. Jin was already pulling up power distribution specs. Dong was calculating attack vectors. Wu Jin was checking his Marines' equipment. They had done this dance so many times it was automatic now. Helm, one said, settling into his command chair, set course, maximum speed. The turned toward the distress signal. Its engines burned bright in the darkness. Behind it, A trail of coolant vapor and ionized particles marked its path. To anyone watching, it looked like a shooting star, a sign of hope in the darkness. The science vessel's crew saw the coming and knew they would survive. The raiders saw it coming and knew they would not. Because there was no longer just a ship, it was a symbol, a legend, a story that crews told each other in mess halls and pilots shared in ready rooms. It was proof that humans did not need the best technology to win. They needed determination, creativity, the refusal to accept that something was impossible just because it was difficult. The Coalition had given humanity the worst ship in the fleet. They had meant it as an insult, as punishment, as a way to teach humans their place. Instead, humanity had taken that insult and turned it into something magnificent. They had taken a ship that should have been scrapped and turned it into a weapon of myth. They had proven that with the right crew, there was no such thing as a hopeless cause. The flew toward the battle, its weapons warming up, its phase shift drive humming with power, its crew ready for whatever came next. They were not the biggest ship in the fleet, not the strongest, not the fastest. But they were and that meant they were exactly where they needed to be. Doing exactly what humans did best. Turning the impossible into the inevitable.